29th of April 2021 open. Call to the opening karakia.
Anyone so much for something to write at the top of all the equality in one woman in the cold break and so forth. Information management today for finding a margin information great in my answer corridor to Hura to Korean honour to God in the highest, peace to his people on earth, and we ask that God guides this hui and the conversations into onto the right path. Amen.
Move to apologies. We have an apology for lateness from Francois. Are there any other apologies? I'd Councillor to resolve that the apology for lateness from Francois be received and accepted. Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Davidson, those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. On to item 3 on the agenda, which is the declaration of interest. A couple of changes that have been made already, hand around. It is on team systems, so we have the opportunity to update on team systems as well. We'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is urgent items not on the agenda. Hopefully informed of any. Around the table. Thank you. Move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the minutes of the previous meeting, which have been circulated on Teams for input. There's been no feedback. The first one is the ordinary council meeting, 25th of March 2021. Before I move to resolutions, is there any discussion on that? Someone would like to move that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 25th of March 2021 be confirmed as a true and correct record of the meeting. Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Martin, those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. I approve that my digital signature be added to the confirmed ordinary council meeting minutes of the 25th of March 2021. Move on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is the action list. And councillors, it's on pages 6 to 8 of the agenda, and we'll hand over to the Chief Executive.
Good afternoon, councillors, Your Worship. I'll just take you through the action list one by one and open up questions at the end. Canary School students cycle crossing. We have all the materials available now. That project got some feedback at the last council meeting regarding the exit off Canary Bridge to realign creating some more safety elements in terms of that intersection. So with a very quick review, yes, we believe that it does need to be modified and not making a curving out into the street, but make it a full T intersection. So that'll be worked on with the district assets team. So I haven't got an exact date when the works will start, so that's working with the transport manager for the crossing itself. Fox Landfill, I'm pleased to say that the river cleanup has been completed, and thanks again to Glacier Guides and taking that role on. It's gone extremely well. The works for remediation at Butler's Landfill, all the material has been relocated. That project has been audited by an independent body and confirmed all the material has gone. The rock wall has been reinstated, so that project is finished. The Butler's Landfill tender will be presented to council in May. That tender closed last week. So we're looking to get that tender awarded and work started in Butters Landfill. So good progress on that project. iwi representation around the council table. Obviously this requires a number of parties form a remit. I'm not sure if the timing's going to fit in terms of this LGNZ remit process, considering it closes on the 14th of May. Remits. There has been a lot of movement within local government around wards, etc. Many different versions of that. Hokitika Wastewater Treatment Plant. There's a report to the council today in regards to the proposal to form a oversight committee with iwi. We have met with iwi at Arano and Brian and had a consultation with them. So we'll talk to that report once it's presented. Stantec have been commissioned to project lead this on behalf of council, and we've put 1.5 million of the 6.9 Three Waters review fund towards this project in regards to getting a design and the stakeholder engagement process completed and resource consent process. Committee and substructure committee structure, that report is coming to council shortly. Gillespie's Beach Miners Cemetery, we've written to all the relevant stakeholders, yet to have a reply, so we basically had a 30-day process from the last council meeting to close the section off. So this section will be considered closed following this meeting. Speed limit register review. The rest of the works is on hold until that NZTA work has been completed. Can confirm though the 1st of May will start implementing the changes that have been approved, adopted, and further that will roll out as over time, but the ones that we have ready to go will go within the next month, so including the CBD, the 30k zone in the town centre, which we've already trialled before. Ross Community Gardens, we have agreed on a lake level and are engineering a solution for that. This is an agreement with all parties, including DOC and the landowner. The scope of work primarily means realigning Jones Creek to the top end of Lake Canary and a culvert or a weir to be developed at the bottom end or the northern end of the lake to go under our roadworks. So that is not a major engineering feat. Council will take the lead in developing that. The resource consent for that for the private landowner. There has been a lot of noise though within the community over the recent weeks. I'm aware that the community has written to Rennis Group asking for to volunteer to support finishing the community gardens, and there's been some I suppose, how do I put it, disagreements. So we're asking both community and RENS to come and have a discussion with me and myself, Councillor Cogan, progressing to an end point for that. Enviro Schools letter, that has been sent to Regional Council. We haven't received any reply to that letter. Mark Davies has been invited to the next council meeting. There's a lot happening in the dock space, and it's going to be quite a good, timely presentation to council. That will include an update on jobs for nature at the same council meeting, in March. Workshop with Western Holding Limited directors and Develop West Coast. That will happen pre-May. So Holdings are due to give an update in the May council meeting. In Kamara Gardens, this is a discussion that is yet to be finalised with the Kamara Community Group. It was put on hold till after the Coast to Coast, so we need to re-engage with them in terms of getting that completed. I'll open up for questions.
Thanks, Alan. Let's go around the table. Could we note Francois 107? Thank you. Anything from the actions?
Thank you. The Canary crossing. So the Emu intersection is going to be turned into a
Yeah, we'll
two-dimension.
take that street bend out.
Yeah.
Because it obviously, take that corner at speed does create another risk.
Yes.
So rather than having complete giveaway, at a T section makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
So I agree with that. But reading this, the crossing is not going to be moved from
So
where it was designed up on that the rise.
correct, because that created that line of sight for both directions.
Okay. I still don't understand that, to be honest.
Through the chair, is there a sketch plan of that?
Not like send one out after this meeting, but
Really good to view it, so we get it.
if council want another site visit, I can arrange another site visit as another action. I know it's happened a couple of times.
Councillor Lane, you raised your hand.
Oh, yeah, just in regard to that, I think what's happened in between the last site visit, we had the council meeting last month, time's gone on, but what I think we ended up deciding as a council at the last meeting is this traffic the safety advice was the proposed location had to stand as the only suitable location. However, the compromise or a workaround was to ensure that on the reserve side of the road, there was a connecting cycle trail that connected to the reserve, so people could cross the road at that point, but then either continue back to town or turn again left back to the reserve and enjoy the domain space.
Footpath upgrade.
Yeah, a footpath upgrade that included taking it to there and then looking at things like sealing that in the future. That was based on the strong safety advice we got from the transportation team, although it was questioned and challenged by elected members at the site visit as well. And we went right through it and said, is this actually we actually, when we were there, we saw some cyclists try and cross the road. And funnily enough, they chose that location to do it. It was like a Kalma, someone must have said, come and cross the road right now because we were all there. But no, they just did it. And it was really interesting to watch. So
They crossed both ways.
But the consideration front and foremost in our heads was around safety, connection to the reserve and flow of cyclists and traffic, the pending reduction in the speed out there, so it should be going to 50 kilometres through that space anyway. It's just giving some context, Paul, to that what happened at that site meeting.
Thanks, Councillor Paul.
Okay, thank you. With the lower speed, could be more acceptable. I've seen dodgier places with crossings, to be honest, and cross from the pub. In the same area in the Canada. The Ross Gardens. Yes, I do understand there've been since accusations of rocks being moved without permission, etc. I thought we had quite a good compromise.
So we do. So I suppose in terms of managing the lake level was the biggest issue pre-Christmas. So we've got to compromise and agreed way forward. Where it's got out of kilter is the Chinese gardens really want them finished because they've been going on for quite some time. So they're offering support to complete them. But in doing so, they've actually also relocated some rocks that Rennis has put in place at the top past the gardens on private property. I'm not sure exactly the reason why Rennis put the rocks in there, but I believe it was to stop people from parking there. But it's created more issues because people can't turn around and go back down the road safely. So there's a whole lot of I suppose interactions that have happened in the last fortnight that have caused some tension. Well, I've asked Bruce and Councillor Cogan, and we're going to ask Mike Keenan to come along as well, and Community Chair and renters group to come and talk about and finding a common way forward rather than reflecting on history of the issues. We need to develop a master plan for the lake and also the reserve.
Just in fun from me, I'm pleased that Executive mentioned about the Kamara Gardens, which of course have had legal longer gestation elephant, and they got an awful lot of council money, and still we've got nothing more than a bit of gravel and a lion. And really, I think it's time for the council to pull its weight here and say, either modify your plans, downscale them to something that's achievable, or come up with something else. But then there needs to be progress. It's just
So they changed that site to a reserve status as part of their development. So they the next step was regarding the Kamara Endowment Fund, which is actually can be allocated towards reserves. That's the only thing it can go to. So that was the next discussion with the community group in terms of them applying to use that fund. Obviously, that fund has been contentious in the past in terms of how it's been allocated. It's still sitting there and unused. It's quite a considerable fund in there.
so through your worship. So is there the talk that they want to tap into that fund again?
Well, they haven't tapped into it because they were removed, if you recall. So we were asking the community group to make an application to council if they wanted to utilise that fund. The next step was to sit at the next community meeting and understand what their future is of the gardens and get an update on that.
Councillor Kennedy.
No, all pretty good, Simon. Oh, just one question. So when are the speed limits that we talked about, when are they going to be posted
So
on the
from
ground?
1st of May they become legal.
Okay,
So it's actually, our process now is to get the signs corrected.
posted on the ground. Oh, yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much. The cycle trail or cycle crossing at Karniri, when is that work proposed to commence and when is it proposed to be finished?
I don't have a date, but I give the two answers.
Thank you so much. I'd like us to, if we can today after council, to discuss iwi representation at the council table. It's urgent, especially if remits close on the 14th of May. So I'm wondering through this worship whether we could, it's going to be a long day, but it would be worth spending some time on that. The speed limits are good that that's coming into place. I saw NZTA's consultation email, and if we don't justify a population size to have a consultation meeting, then I think we should be ignoring and proceeding anyway with our speed limit reviews. However, I appreciate we live in a very bureaucratic world, so we will wait. Can we please have a copy of the Enviro Schools letter? Yeah, is that all good? And wondering whether or not the regional council would consider that a submission to their long-term plan, or whether whether it has fallen outside of that process, and some advice on how to best deal with that.
I would suggest we should make a submission directly as part of the long-term request.
If that's what council would like to do. Yeah.
Simply that task.
Cool. Thank you very much. Just to clarify, I think in regards to the workshop with Holdings and Destination Western, that was specifically around the pensioner housing update, and it was because in our previous workshops they'd set some KPI measurables for March, for delivery in March or execution in March, and it was around finding out now that we're in April, possibly May, how that strategy is actually tracking. So that was the Economic Development Committee's request for that workshop. I think it's different to a briefing to council. It was like, we need to sit down and actually just look at that pensioner, or the housing strategy, and are we delivering on it?
Yeah, through worship, there's been a number of changes since that last discussion. There's a number of other avenues for additional housing funding. We have $3.8 billion announced for infrastructure for housing from the government as well,
Mhm.
as part of their consideration.
Cool. And Jobs for Nature, will that align with Mark Davies coming? The final point on the action list talks Jobs for Nature, follow up and bring to next meeting. Is that going to be Mark in May? Yeah. So just right. So I think we roll those two action items together.
So at the last C's gathering we had on Tuesday, we got an update from them. It's fair to say we raised concerns about the lack of communication from that forum, where any of those applications are in the process line. From what I understand, the fund has already been fully allocated. We just want an update to where it's gone, what projects they've gone to. So we will potentially ask the chair, Mike Meehan, to address council as well.
Okay, cool. And my final thing's just around probably following this. I think it would be useful to have like a traffic light system. So if it's green, it's done and it falls off. If it's orange, or it's kind of like pending. And if it's red, like the Canary Crossing, it's 18 months, 2 years overdue, just to make it so we know what's on top, and we know very quickly at a visual what will immediately fall off.
Yep. So
it's just my feedback, my thoughts.
But make a suggestion that anything over 3 months becomes red.
Yep. Thank you.
Councillor Hart.
No, nothing further, thanks.
Councillor Hartshorn.
I think that's a very good outcome for the Canary Crossing, especially slowing that traffic down and doing a T intersection there should give pretty good visual a view down there. So no, that's a good outcome, and that's about all I need to say.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Just with the speed limit review, will we be able to input other roads into that list there?
So we're waiting for the outcome of the speed limit review, and the ones that we haven't addressed as part of the first round will be as part of the second round.
So we can input more into that second round?
If there's more to be added, yes, definitely. I think if there's more, I suppose, areas of concern or has safety elements imposed, it definitely.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of talk around schools and the change of speech around rural and schools within the town boundaries. There's some changes there that have to happen anyway.
Thank you.
Councillor Cogan.
Just to touch base on the Ross Chinese Garden thing. So I'm just getting myself mentally prepared because I'm going to attend the monthly Ross meeting on Monday night.
Mm-hmm.
So at this stage, you've sent out a letter to them for them and Mickey to let us know a suitable time and date
so
for.
The worship sent an email to them last week.
Yep.
The date has yet to be confirmed though.
And get Mickey involved as well.
Yes, he's agreed, and Charlie's come back and said.
Okay, so we've just got to sort out a suitable time.
Okay,
just so I'm just.
What I understand, the awareness group are no longer attending the community group meeting.
Okay.
There may be just one side of the argument you may hear on Monday night.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Just on the Ross Gardens, I appreciate the support and guidance that the council provides. Just clarity I need is who's going to be responsible for the long-term management of that area?
It's a community. It's not on council property at all.
That's correct. Yeah.
So it would be a community project to continue to maintain, unless there was a way it was vested in councils in some capacity. But I think it's on DOC estate anyway. Yeah. So it's the agreement is between Rennes and DOC, not with Rennes and council.
Thank you.
There is some areas within council reserve that needs to be managed, and an overarching management plan needs to be done for the reserve anyway.
Thank you.
And Francois.
No, I think everything's been answered. Well, just off the speed limit stuff, how's the Old Christchurch Road works?
Progressing well. They've already sealed quite a proportion of it, the easy part. So that project still has quite a bit of work to do, particularly down the northern end of the road. So we're still anticipating that won't be completed until October, November.
Thank you, Simon. Would someone like to move that the updated action list be received?
Yeah.
COVID, Councillor Hart, those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 7 on the agenda is presentations, and we welcome Jo Armstrong. She's the project manager for the Te Taipatini plan. Jo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Oh, is someone going to put the presentation up? Thank you, Your Worship and councillors, for having me. I'll be as brief as I can, just to give you a quick update on the decision that Taipatini Plan Committee has made to accelerate the delivery of the plan. It's come about because of the government's recently announced Resource Management Act reforms, which is going to affect the planning framework on the West Coast, including Te Taipatini Plan. Can I have the next slide, please? Can she do it? Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the catalyst for this. We were planning on delivering a notified plan in 2023, but with the RMA reform that's come out, having that come into place in 2022. So we wanted to be a step ahead of this legislation. So the 3 acts that have come out under the reform of the Natural and Built Environments Act, which is there to provide for land use and environmental regulation, which is what we consider now the RMA does. So it's what your district planning is mostly going to be under this core piece of legislation. The second one, the Strategic Planning Act. Look, it's to integrate with other legislation relevant to development. So it's a lot to do with housing in and around Auckland, but there's also a requirement probably for long-term regional spatial strategies. So that's going to be something the districts and region get together as a region to do. And then the third one, the Climate Change Adaptation Act. It's to address complex issues around managed retreat and to look at the funding and financing for adaptation. So actually this should be a really positive act for the West Coast, because there's going to be some areas you need to consider where managed retreat's going to be your best option. And if you can get support from central government on that, then that's a bonus. Okay, now exposure draft of the Natural and Built Environments Act's expected out in May, so that's next month. They said they're probably not going to tell us a heck of a lot more than we already know, but that'll be coming out and will give us perhaps a little bit more indication. And they're hoping to have the bill introduced to Parliament by the end of this year, and then the bill passed into law by December 2022. And exposure drafts of the others coming out by the end of this year, all 3 of them being passed into law during this parliamentary term. So they're very serious about this legislation change. I'll talk more about the Natural and Built Environments Act, because that's the one where legislation is going to guide regional and district planning. And they've proposed under this act so far that there will be one plan per region rather than a bunch of regional plans and separate district plans, although for us it's one combined district plan, that all regional and district planning would come under one instrument, which would be called the Natural and Built Environments Plan for the West Coast. It's likely also that there'll be a transition from whatever current legislation or district and regional plans are in place. There'll be probably around about 10 years until you have to have your Natural and Built Environment Plan in place. And so that means stepping ahead from the 2022 when the Natural and Built Environment Plan Act comes out, that it could be 2032 before that comes into place. And so anything we've already done for TTPP, Te Taipatini Plan, would need to be incorporated into this plan. And if we don't get it done in time, then it could be 5, 6, 8 years before that needs to be incorporated, in which case everything we've done will probably have to be rewritten because things will have changed in that amount of time. Thank you. We looked at a couple of options with the joint committee. One was to stick with the status quo and continue developing TTPP under the current timeline and budget until 2022 December, when the Natural and Built Environment Act came in. And then it would become part of the whole Natural and Built Environment Plan for the whole region, delivering in 2032. And the second option we offered was to accelerate delivery so that the work undertaken to date isn't lost, and we can keep using the familiar RMA process. The committee endorsed the option 2 to accelerate or fast track delivery for many reasons, actually. But it means that we'll be looking at notifying TTPP before the resource management law is enacted in 2022, and then TTPP would be deemed notified under the Natural and Built Environments Act. So if we get it done beforehand, they say, yep, we're happy with that, you can keep it in the state it's at now, and we would just start using whatever processes are in place under the Natural and Built Environment Act from that point. And the Randerson report had recommended that a streamlined appeals process comes in under the Natural and Built Environments Act, so we could take advantage of that, which would be a fantastic thing to do. This fourth point here is really important. At the moment, you'll realise that all the district plans on the West Coast are 30 years old, and when they first were put in, there was really no telling what was going to change in 30 years. It's a long way out. And if we can get this Te Taipōtini plan in place before 2022, so that it's operative before 2032, then we can make sure we've got some provisions in there that are a lot more enabling, particularly for development and for iwi, rather than waiting around for that extra time. So when you first put your plan in place, you set aside areas for residential, commercial and industrial, and particularly in Westland, you've run out of that industrially zoned land. So we're working on provisions into Te Taipōtini plan for where would be a good place to direct people to do industrial, development, and where it can support infrastructure. So it's really important we move on with that and give some more self-determination to iwi, particularly on their lands and looking after their taonga. Okay, next slide, I think. So I'll just quickly tell you that this accelerating will mean that we'll be looking at putting a draft plan out around about the end of January next year, and then having a proposed plan notified in the middle of the year, a year ahead of schedule, around about the end of July 2022. So we're definitely going to be moving things along. So by speeding things up, we do have some increased work that we have to deliver. We've got to get research that we were planning to do over 2 years into 1 year, and we've got to actually write all the provisions much more quickly. So we're asking the Regional Council for increased 2021-2022 budget to enable us to do that research quickly. But the flip side of that is that if we do it a year quicker, then we will have reduced fixed costs of over $500,000. So in the long run, that's also a big benefit for the process. There will be less time for community consultation, but we have got really good contacts already. We've worked with, we've partnered with iwi, we've worked with all our key stakeholders and had workshops on things like mining and environmental issues. We've we've met with developers. We've got a website that we keep up to date, and it's got information sheets and questionnaires. We've had a road trip where we've gone up and down, pulling your lovely little caravan to meet with people and explain what we're doing. So we've used media. We've had a lot of consultation and feel like we've got really good contacts that I send regular updates to. And again, a real benefit is that we can put more enabling provisions in now rather than waiting an additional 10 years for that to happen. Next slide, please. We will defer some research, but what we're thinking is that we won't do any additional research around managed retreat, because with that Climate Change Adaptation Act, we can let central government do that for us, and also help give us direction on funding instruments for that. So hopefully they'll even come with some financial support. I don't know if you're aware, but plan changes currently to your district plan actually has to go through the West Coast Regional Council until we have an operative Te Taipōtini plan, when the joint committee that has some representatives from your council can make those decisions. So you can either start making those decisions through the joint committee sometime after 2022 or sometime after 2032. And that does have a cost to the district council. At the moment, central government, when they're putting out new legislation, are also including quite restrictive default provisions to make sure that different things are protected and given, elevated for things that they think are important. And they might say, this is the bottom line, this is the number you must put in your plan if you haven't already done the work to prove that something else is the right number. So getting Te Taipōtini plan through ahead of the Natural and Built Environment Act means we can do all that proving. We can justify the numbers that we put in our plan and say, actually, we're comfortable we've made these decisions for the West Coast, so we will hopefully be able to not have to add these default provisions because we'll have done the work for us already. Streamlined appeals, big benefit. But the bottom one, the last point here, I think is really important. The proposed plan would be notified within this term of council and the TTPP committee that we've got at the moment that's been making all the decisions so far about what the plan is going to look like. Keeping it in that time, with just this one group of decision makers, actually buys us back about 5 or 6 months of the extra 12 months we were going to take to notification, because they would have to stop making decisions a couple of months before the elections, the local body elections in October 2022, and then we would have to bring any new members up to speed and let them have some feedback and input into what we'd already made decisions on. So that would be a few months as well. So that actually is a really big benefit for us. I'm going to just talk briefly to finish off about the implications for resourcing. The resources that we get from Westland District Council at the moment are there's 5 people actually around the table at the moment who are involved in our process, either as decision makers or CEs on the steering group. But also we have a technical advisory team, which are 4 senior planners from the 4 different councils and 1 from Ngāi Tahu. So those are the resources that we're using, the time and your people's expertise at the moment. So need for governance and technical input's obviously going to increase in the short term if we fast track delivery, and we'd be looking at increasing the number of papers that both the technical team and the committee have to read each month and make decisions about. Would be adding additional workshops, particularly for the committee, on contentious issues, so that we can talk through those and get a really good understanding of where the direction that we want provisions to go in. And then from probably the beginning of October through to the middle of December meeting, the committee and the TAT, the Technical Advisory Team, are going to have to work through the entire draft plan prior to giving approval for it to go out to community consultation at the end of January. So we want to get feedback from the community. It'll be out for a couple of months, which will give them a couple of months break, and then from about March, their bottom point there, March to June 2022, there's going to be reduced commitment from all of them to finalise any changes and provisions before we put out the proposed plan, and that will include things like final bits of research and to add and make changes on the feedback that we've received on the draft. So going back up to the top here, I'm particularly talking here about the technical advisory team as a resource from Westland District Council. I asked the team how much time per month they're already giving to TTPP, and 2 of them responded. One said 6 and one said 10 hours a month. So I was generous and went sort of between 1 and 2 days a month. From September to, I would say earlier than September, probably. I don't know why I've written September there, but possibly from May to December 2021, we're going to have an increased time commitment requirement from them of about 20 to 25%. So I would say it's still probably going to fit into that 16 hours or 2 days worth of their time that we're going to need. And that might be an increase, of an extra day for some of them. Then March to June, after we've got the feedback, that reduced commitment. So it's really going to be a fast and furious 7 months, I think, from here on till the end of this year is what we're going to require from your staff and elected officials. And also all of you elected councillors will occasionally, might be once or twice in that time, be invited to brief workshops to get some feedback from you. Things like where we're looking at rezoning land, where you've got a really good understanding of your district and what the people want there and what they need. So would appreciate you responding and coming along to those as we have need, but we would value your input is what it comes down to. So that's all from me. I hope it made sense. I went along at a clip, so I wasn't holding you up, but if you've got any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thanks, Joe. Councillors, Francois.
I'm all happy, I'm up to speed with it, so thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thank you. The whereabouts will you be based?
Me personally or the team?
The team.
We're spread. We have we have a consultant in Gisborne, and we've got our senior planner is at the West Coast Regional Council buildings at the moment. So she's on the coast.
Okay, and who are you responsible to? To
the joint committee, and particularly the chairman of the joint committee. We spend he and I talk every week and strategise, and he follows what I'm doing. But really, the committee are the decision makers. What we do is we provide information and advice to them.
Thank you.
Councillor Cove.
Thanks very much for what you've just provided. I guess the thing that I was just surprised around was the amount of resources that are required, and continue to be required around that. It's like it's a big ask, isn't it? When there's so much else going on, with everybody and with councils in general, it is a lot.
Sorry, I'm sure that actually was the reason that your CE asked me to share that with you. But the reality is my team could write this plan, but we want, and hopefully you want, to have that level of involvement where your staff that have already worked on your district plan and understand your future plans are having that level of involvement in the plan, so that you've got some confidence and your ratepayers have got confidence that we're hearing from you, from them. So we're not just making a plan ourselves.
Oh.
Councillor Neal.
Yeah, no questions. Thank you.
Councillor Hartshall. Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Joe. An awful lot of work to get done in a short time, but yeah, keen to be a part of it if required.
Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for the report, Joe. I know the content well. I'm going to pass a funny comment about lunch and food, but I won't. Being well fed, because we've got 2-day meetings or full-day meetings coming up for the rest of the year, so it's fun times ahead. But no, seriously, well done on the work, and it's a very functional group to be part of. Very good to see elected representation from across the region, CEs from across the councils, and the very professional staff led by Joe. So,
Councillor Kennedy.
No, all good. Just one question, where it's the recommendations for the RMA reform are to have all the districts plans into one plan per region. I wonder how that region's defined, whether it's going to be like the super regional Three Waters thing or the West Coast regional thing. My thoughts are it will be defined as the super regional entity, and we're going to have 5 throughout the whole country. Just kind of, what are your thoughts, Joe? You reckon I'm right?
I can give you a thought. They originally said 14 regions, and there are actually 16. So I wondered something along those lines. Yeah. But then some of the committee members and council members were at a meeting with DIA, and they indicated that it would be one per existing region. So they're obviously still nutting that out. So I'm not sure that they've quite talked down to the 5 yet, but yes, we'll see.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Joe. And of course, this is the issue, isn't it? Is that this is an example of legislation on the hoof from this government. It's the way they seem to roll. And that's what's caught us out, is the reform of the Resource Management Act, and how they want to change the world as we know it. And so here we are, a long way through the TTPP, and then all of a sudden it was a decision of either we scrap it and start again under their new rules, or we forge ahead. And so the decision was to forge ahead, but that comes at a huge cost in terms of staff and commitment from the members. And so, I do really feel for the staff. They have to squeeze all this, and ourselves, I might add, because there's going to be a lot more reading, a lot more meetings, longer meetings coming up, because we have to squeeze all this into a much shorter time frame, unfortunately. However, the alternative was just too horrible to think of. So, here we are.
Deputy Mayor Grant. What I can say is that it's a very cohesive committee. It's actually achieving very good results. I think that's largely down to the way Joe's leading it, but also to the way that everyone around the table seems to be working in a common interest, which is very good to see. Joe, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time. And councillors, invite someone to move that the presentation from Joe Armstrong, project manager from the Tai Botini plan, be received. Councillor Kennedy, I'm seconded. Councillor Martin, those in favour? Aye. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Joe. Move on to the next item on the agenda, which is an interesting one. Reading the notes here, junk to fund concept, and welcome to Claire O'Connell. And Claire, thank you for taking the time.
Kia ora, everybody. Had a thank you for having me to speak. I'm not a speaker, so bear with me. I'm here to share a concept I've come up with, which I think will be beneficial throughout the meeting. After I had created it, I was put in touch with Councillor Martin, who suggested that I present a business plan and a presentation. So this is what I put together. can't read it quite. In a changing world, in particular in the wider Westland district, needs a dedicated space for the community to access, to upskill, engage and create. My presentation focuses on developing a collaborative community event space, a maker space, and the social wellbeing of bringing people together. Just put a point or something. The address I'm going to talk about today is 101 Sewell Street, so a real central location. And the ways that I think that it could be utilised are, sorry, it's not so clear on the slides, as a central hub to bring the community together, a maker space, you know about these that are popping up, and a collaborative workshop, workshops, events, classes and creativity. To house our Jump to Funk competition, which I'll elaborate on a little bit further. Hope to give homage to recycled rural art creations. 101 would be an incredible location to host the Jump to Funk awards and hold creative workshops. 3 as opportunities to use as a startup and incubator space for the next generation of entrepreneurs, including our new plastic-free Hokitika brand and other local startups. And as a community hub, community is the core of the hub that I present, an all-inclusive environment to foster learning, growth, upskilling and connection. Space, you can see a little bit here, it's a phenomenal space. It's open plan, which is great for collaboration. On the left here, you've got like a runway, which is a long collaboration centerpiece, long table to bring everyone together to create, make, eat, celebrate. On the top right there, you've got the pod, which is a podcast recording studio, something that we don't have in town. Let's record the history of Hokitika and stories from our older generation while we still have the opportunity. And the pod could also be hired as a recording studio for kids to record podcasts and local talent. Bottom right, you have a snug, so it's kind of soft furnishings area, an environment to host Zoom meetings, screenings, international speakers, a quiet retreat to read, study, knit, crochet, small meetings, and then hot desking on the top right, which is would offer homework stations for sometimes for children that don't have a conducive space to do homework, a space to come after school, space to work on their products. And the next slide shows a few more spots. So a maker space in the top right, with a dedicated selection of tools, including like 3D printers, soldering, electronics, printing, new technology like CNC cutters and laser cutters that will introduce students and the community to new technologies, building equipment, industrial sewing machines, making spaces. The area would also be equipped with a side workbench and 4 modular workstations on wheels, designed with an option of multiple worktops in wood, steel, plastic, stainless steel, depending on the discipline. The idea of the space is to be completely modular, to be able to move all of the whole runway and tables away, so it's an open space where it could be for local dance or Zumba lessons, and then all moved back into place. The space could be used completely in so many different ways. A tool library, utilising the understeers, would allow members to reserve and rent equipment. Don't only go and buy that expensive tool for one job. They will be provided with how-to manuals along care instructions before returning. Shoulding and slide-out drawers will allow security as well, and access under the stairs there. And then we have a mezzanine for yoga, work meditation, a space to slow down, breathe, rest, and be present in the moment. To attend live classes or to log into Zoom or online yoga classes via Bluetooth with headphones, to jump in a beanbag over a coffee and take a bite. Here are some proposed floor plans. You can see here on the ground floor, mezzanine, and how all those modular runway tables will be moved. Another just visual of the we've secured if needed 101.nz and how the website could work. People could log on to different workshops. So, a lot more to it, but I'm just presenting the initial concept for you today. This is some possible revenue streams. The proposed way to set it up, like many around the world, is through a membership model where people have different membership rates for access and how they want to use it. For people using it for hot desking or for dedicated office space, we're making higher space for local events because we don't have anywhere in the community. We have very few places, sorry. People have birthdays, events. For my friends with children, there's nothing. If you're not into sort of local sports teams or outdoors, there's nothing inside, especially when we don't have space weather. We have the opportunity to build our own story to capture the history of the West Coast while nurturing and bringing our community together. Let's work together to create a community based around creative learning, exploration, and discovery of the Western District. The wellness factor and value achieved through engagement and making builds a stronger and more connected community. So let's make that a possibility. Some possible collaborations who would be housed from the space as well, along with the plastic free initiative as well. That's being launched at the moment. The property is currently owned by Nancy Lawhouse and it's currently on the market. The RP is 135. Some of the pros, I think, is really the location of the space. It's really accessible for a lot of the community and the youth as well to get to. The size of it, the possibilities of what it could be. It's really open, the light that you get there, so much that could be done. Now, I've had meetings with the council around planning and building use because there's currently a hillcrest, which is a site is contaminated, being that it used to be a garage. Now, this is a problem if you're going to build residentially, you've got to remove all of that earth. If we're still using it as a workshop and we're not removing a lot of that earth, then it's not as much of an issue to get consent to use it in this way. It has, and sort of for the building as well, being that it's still used as a workshop, there's no big issue around sort of change of usage. We still do need to get a fire report, to get an engineer's report, the building vents, the roof, and extra cladding, and that's some more work that I've got to discuss. The space to start with has incredible bones and it's an amazing space. I think it's the space that inspired me most to create this. What I wanted to be, so John DePunk, I've been involved in Wirrablata Woods for 25 plus years, and one Woods was back in Nelson and and I've taken over producing it this year, just to lift it up to the level that I think it deserves. It's been in particular for 11 years, and it's an amazing community of great creatives around, and I just think it's a little bit more love. So I proposed this year to take it nationwide, to make to make a particular destination, like with our wild foods, our old feral fashions. It'd be great to have somewhere in the South Island. With the world of Wirrablata now being so huge and international, the standard of it is so that even 20 years ago, it's really hard for people to even get accepted, even to win these awards. So I think there's a lot of creatives all over New Zealand that are a lot of creativity and costumes hiding out there. And it would be great to just slowly start to build it a little bit bigger than what it has been so far. Ours being unique because it focuses on a 75% recycled I've designed so far a new brand for Gelton Farm. I've got a website due to be launched in a couple of weeks. I'm just finishing off the bits to it. We've got a Facebook campaign launch and Instagram all ready to go in the next couple of weeks. And so we've got a bit distracted on the whole 101 concept, which seemed to incorporate everything. This is what I've been working on. I secured 3 renowned New Zealand artists, creators to come down as judges. Miranda Brown, I worked with 20 years ago, who's now based in Oxford, is an amazing artist, and she also produced the Trash to Fashion movement and will mentor me when he does cricket. And Joe Holly is a fantastic MC, and I think something like that is special people that can bring all of that together. And how we can do it is through following points, really strong team. I've started to pull together the space, you know, like this would be great to house it, but I would need some space is coming here. We've secured funding through Creative New Zealand and so put that into place to help take it nationwide. And 101, I think, would be just such an ideal venue to host these kind of awards. In addition to nurture, seed, flourish, and grow community ventures, various startups, classes, and events within our community. And I present today to see how you think, what you think of the space, the concept, how you think it could benefit our community, and to see if you want to work together on the next steps that this project requires to make it a reality.
Thanks, thanks, Claire. We'll just see if there are any questions around the table. Paul, perhaps we can
I was just wondering what you're wanting from the district council. What would you like from us?
Funding to create it, basically. That's what I was told, that there was funding available to put a project like this together.
You mean to purchase the building?
To purchase the building, to redo the building, to launch the space. I have a lot that I can give and add to it, but I believe that 1 + 1 = 3 together stronger.
How much for the total concept do you think?
I wanted to present before I went to get into detail. I know that Nancy would like 150 for it. The RV at the moment is 135. There is other parties interested, but they're having a bit of trouble with soil samples due to contamination. You know, I believe, for me, it's really important to create a building that inspires people, that is warm, that is well insulated and secure. And with that, you can do anything. Grow with the community is needed.
Do you know if there's been a seismic assessment carried out on the building?
There is some tests going through now, but they have not been able to get any green mark because they've been to go to Christchurch. And I don't know the results of that. Sorry, it's pretty much initial sort of expression of interest.
Yeah.
My heart is in what is that.
So who would own the building? Who would own it?
Well, if the council was to purchase it, the council belonged to it.
Okay, thanks.
It's innovation 101, that's for sure. People with less vision like myself would have thought that Wars Motors was ready for bulldozers, to be honest. But and this is a really innovative concept, and just shows what we can do with inspiration and an eye for innovation. So, and as for the seismic thing, it's a very old building, but to be honest, I'd sooner be in that than this building.
It was in the 1930s and it's been around this long. It would stand for a bit longer.
Yeah, I agree.
Councillor King.
No, look, it's all really good, I suppose. Like perhaps, like WMEC or others, I think, this project, I've got to shell out some cash for it, and I worry. But I mean, this would contribute to the community. I suppose there'd be some economic benefit for the community with this whole thing, should it go forward. And that's where I say, well, that's right up Development West Coast alley, isn't it? And but good on you, look into it.
Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Claire, for the presentation. It's really good to see the presentation pitched to people that haven't been exposed to it and see the sort of reaction. I think, to me, council has 4 pillars: economic, social, environmental, cultural, and we're obliged under the Local Government Act to give effect to all 4 with equal balance. And I think sometimes councils are still stuck in we just look after the economic and make sure our infrastructure is okay. But we're actually mandated to be interested and involved in concepts such as this. So I get excited by them. And I see, like you, how this is like a bit of an octopus and can connect to so many already existing initiatives in the community, aspirations in the community, and ideals that are held by the community. Especially the work when you look around like the Heritage Park and the work that they do in terms of utilising things that, like Paul would said, would be destined for the scrap heap. The fact that our youth population makes up over 30% of our district, and how do we as a council provide facilities for that 33% of our population. So there's lots of food for thought in the presentation, and I'd like to see the concept endorsed by council and stand the test of time through the LTP process, which is, in terms of actually planning tools, is the right tool to have it involved in. So in terms of allowing councillors in the community to be engaged in a process, it's probably the best time you can be presenting to council is today, because we're about to embark on that process over the next few months. So thank you for your time and your energy. And
I was just going to say, I know it's a big project and it's a lot of creativity, and it can seem daunting process of creating it all the money, but I just feel that the outcome to the community, for the future, and for such longevity is huge. I got moved to a small town from the city at the age of 14, and it's pretty tough when you're stuck in the country and there's not much to do. And who are those people that inspire you to teach you different skills you didn't know existed, and to give you sort of open your mind in small communities. So that's part of my where I'm emotionally connected to it, as well as to give back to the youth, and I've nurtured quite a few local youth. So a space to do that would be amazing.
And we sat on the creative community funding last week, and the whole committee commented on how well written and professional the application was, and felt that the application would be fitting to actually be lodged with Creative New Zealand nationally. It was of that calibre. So in terms of, really committee were like, wow, this is such an amazing concept. We haven't seen anything like this before. So just some feedback, and it's important for the council to know that we are already kind of contributing with that grant, but the bigger vision of the space is exciting, I think.
I really want to share as well, because I just feel it brings together 25 years of my experience in working around the world, working with creative startups. We accepted on different pilots. The beginning of Blend Studios in Melbourne, Creative Studios in Manchester during the session, everyone pulling together. It's an outcome of I've learned and able to pass on.
Councillor Hart.
Thanks, dear. It was I really loved the concept, and I'm a big believer that Hokitika needs a facility for the youth, and I think that concept alone is great. So whatever support we can give it, I would like to be a part of that.
Councillor Hunter.
Yeah, thanks very much for presenting this. It's good to see, and I, believe it or not, went to the very first Wearable Arts in the Cobb House in Wakefield, so I know where it started and where it went to, and I think this has got great future direction to do something for Hokitika and the surrounding area. I just wonder, the building is where it would end up if it was bought and how much it would cost in that, but is there any buildings at the racecourse which would be suitable for this in the short-term growth, or?
I haven't been through the buildings up there. One draw card, I think, in 101 is just the location. It's close to students after school, it's close to the elderly as well. I plan to have, communities to bring them together as well, because part of bringing these people together is about stopping loneliness and well-being. It's not just what we create or what they might come in to create, it's about bringing people together. So that's why the location. So it's central, you go a little bit further out, it's a bit harder for people to get to. But of course, I'm open to many different spaces. There's many ways you can.
Yeah, that's fair comment, and I totally agree with you that the Wirawa level now is too high for most of the people in New Zealand to participate, and I think your idea will go well in its own right. So I'd be keen to see something happen, but yeah, thank you.
Councillor Neal.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sort of thoughts probably to Ian, just are there other spaces that are already there that aren't being utilised fully that may work? So I want to be convinced that there's not doubling up on more spaces again. I love the ideas. I love the ideas of the workshops. And yeah,
there's a few other spaces. There's Rex Tectonic Jade is for sale. I've been through that, and it's a little bit more of a rabbit warren over sort of 3 titles. I am aware that the Lions scalping place is being extended, and there's a possible space there. There's a space I'm just looking into, sort of for wherever for the jump this year, central on Rebel Street. It's a little bit smaller, but it might be nice for our first step as we grow, because obviously things can be rolled out in stages. And this will need a bit of work. I'm not thinking it's going to be done tomorrow if possible. So yeah, I'm aware of lots of open places centrally as well. For me, yeah, I was so inspired, and I don't think a lot of this came from the location of that space. So it's the location. But yeah, again, if there's places that I don't know of, then I'm more than happy to see.
Councillor Kogan.
Great presentation, Claire. I love the whole concept around, what you want to achieve, and to be honest, I think we're really lucky to have people like yourself with that vision and proven history of success, that are living in our communities and willing to, want to put their visions out there. So great work on that. I guess the biggest concern I would have would be around, because, as you know already, council own a lot of community facilities, and we have a very small rating base, and we struggle at times to be able to, it's not only a case of owning them, but it's also a case of then ongoing maintenance with them, where funding comes from. And that's not to put you off, but have you actually approached anyone else externally about funding opportunities or investors to look into the purchase of?
I came up with this a couple of weeks ago. I pulled this together in a couple of weeks. So it's
because
I
just think, that could also be something for you to consider. There might be a.
And I've talked to a few people, and to go forward with lotteries as well. I think as one independent, it would be great to have an expression of interest from the council and have council alongside. I know that there's a lot of other funding bodies from DOC that funds all sorts of projects.
Yeah.
The lotteries grant. I know that if, for example, putting a podcast recording studio in there and offering a subject or something the high school didn't offer, we then come under government grants, education grants.
Right.
So we can get money through that.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different ways.
Yeah.
Yes, but for just putting together a concept.
I wouldn't see a reason why council wouldn't, just in terms of, supporting your concept, be right in behind it, because I think if anyone is with as much enthusiasm as what you have and the concept of what you're doing there, I see real benefit too. Yeah.
There's something you said earlier as well about the creative people we have. So I've pretty much been working, I've been here for 7 years. Probably technically it feels like 1 year because I put everything into my business for 6 years and I work 24/7. With COVID and that changing, I've now had the time to change my business model and put something back into the community. And doing that, I've started to meet a lot more people. And there are so many creative people in our in Hokitika and just further afield as well, but there's no way to connect them. There's no hub to bring them together. And I went and did a questionnaire at the Children's Day just to garner some interest of adults and of children and see what they think about it. And just in those 3 hours, I met some amazing people who were keen to volunteer skills. I met another woman, a local artist, lady I didn't know, who set up the Maker Studios in Waterloo in London. She's current in 2011, and she currently still manages them from Hokitika, and she flies over there twice a year. So the people that we have in our community, not just our artists and creators, to bring you together.
Yeah, and going to, you know, I mean, going to a WOW performance myself, you know, it proved to me that it's a spectacular show, but you're absolutely right. It is very international now. And I know from people that are actually involved in it that there's, you know, there's got to be a lot of things you've got to pass through to even get yourself even accepted to be standing up on that show, you know, stage. And I feel so sorry for all those other talented people, you know, that are just really missing out.
It was tough 25 years ago, and now the standard since being back in New Zealand, and I've been to all the galleries. It's phenomenal. The work's incredible because there's not that I know of something else similar in the world. So it's great what they've done. But our New Zealand creatives are incredible.
It's a show that should be going international, not just staying in New Zealand. That's my feeling.
Councillor, sorry.
I'm sorry. So it's still, you know, things have got to grow slowly. You've got to get a strong foundation. So just to start it this year and see how we go, taking it nationwide. But also I'd like to give it that Hokitika feel, you know, that homegrown, that it's still not overproduced and modelled and styled, but it's friendly and it's fun. And especially involving the kids as well. And I've got some appointments to go and talk to some of the stores about the kids making stuff. The space that I'm looking at environment for the interim, a space where I can hold some workshops for different stuff, teaching them how to bond different staff, so what concept is behind creativity.
Cool.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. I like your thinking.
Thank you.
Yeah, really great energy and vision, and, you know, particularly for the young, but the elderly. You know, I know a lot of elderly people around there, you know, close by, and that's really good thinking.
I've got 4 pensioners right next to me. They look after it, so you know, they're my inspiration for that as well.
Right around, you know, good stuff. The only thing is it's just it's low lying land. That's the one of the risk there. Like if and when it does flood, that's one of the first places that water comes in. But the location is really good in terms of people.
It's really good for light as well. They talked a little bit just about the sunlight that you get coming right over on that corner section as well. You're not sort of poked into a tiny little sort of space.
That's good.
I've got some more. I've got a lot more plans, but I've got some more ideas about the building and using solar as well.
I bet you
to keep the running costs down. So perfect location for the sun as well. Right around.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, I think you're absolutely very crazy, but
That's fantastic.
I really do. And I, as an avid supporter of Kendra year on year, I can see where this could go. And I absolutely agree with the building you've chose. I think that would actually give it some more life. I get that. So I think you're on point. I think also this council needs to support you somehow. I'm not too sure how to do that. Bearing in mind that we're aware of the pressures that council and ratepayers are under at this time. So I don't know how that happens, but we need to talk to Simon and the team down at the dungeons on how we can support you. But I love it. Good on you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I was in love with that space for the last 3 years when Rob was my mechanic. So I've loved it for a long time, and that's why it popped up in my mind when I was thinking of space to help with some pumps.
No, well,
Thanks for getting it.
Well, like you said, to wrap it up, it feels to me like the ownership should be the trust of some things. Sorry.
Councillor Hartshaw's got a question.
Oh, I was here. Ian, Councillor Hartshaw.
Yes, no, I was just interested to hear whether I'm just trying to work it in my head. Is it a community-based thing, or is it going to turn into more of a investment or more of a business type thing? Once you start doing the wearable arts, it'll just grow from one to the other, I thought.
Well, that's just annually, one event annually.
Yep.
Would be held there. In the business model, I've got lots of different ideas, I think, to have events there as well. I want to have it sort of a blank canvas inside, so my design is super clean, so it can be, like you said, totally versatile. I talked to someone yesterday who said when they have their dojo taekwondo competitions, their space is quite small, so even to move everything when they have their visiting guests or it's bigger, it can totally suffice for something like that. Another thing that we need a space for is like when local kids have birthday parties. There's nowhere to go. We don't have a bounce, we don't have a climbing wall, we don't have anything. So again, that long table, the mums can hire it for 2 hours, there's a music system set up, there's lights, they can come in and play, and they're out again. And it's all dry, undercover, it's warm. So I want it to be many things, and I think it can be many things. And it has to be for a small community.
Certainly sounds interesting, and it's different. I don't know that it'll fit a council model, but it will fit a trust model. There are numerous places that funding can be applied for. I'm proposing that council endorses the concept. I can tell you as mayor, if you want letters of support, just send me an email. I could see funk to junk to funk, or which way around? Junk to funk.
Nice, right?
Anyway, I could see being an absolutely amazing, significant event for the coast. It's huge. So look, I'm going to kick it off with. I'd like to move that council supports the concept and offers support that doesn't extend to financial support at the stage, but full support.
I just have one. I agree. I think what would be really useful for us is to have a business case. So that would guide my thinking. You know, if we developed, or I don't know what the mechanism is to actually develop a business case, but we've heard today about business cases and how critical they are. And if there was a business case developed that said, you know, recommended a trust model and ownership model this way, and it needs X 100,000 to do the project, then I think that would guide our thinking. I think this was conceptual, and that's the bit that would take it from being conceptual to something we could get in behind in some way.
DWC would potentially write a business case. So in the first instance, let's see how the table feels about supporting the concept and allowing me as mayor to support any funding applications or any advice that we can give. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Someone like to move something can.
I'm happy to move.
Are you hand up again there, Ian?
Oh no, I'm happy to say yes.
Well, there you go. And so we've got moved by Jenny, seconded by those in favour?
Aye.
Unanimous support. Good luck. Keep in touch, and I think what you're thinking about has just got incredible benefits.
Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Claire.
So, could I ask that the council move the presentation from Claire O'Connell, producer at Junk to Funk Wearable Arts, be received? Councillor Kennedy, thank you. Do I have a second to Councillor Hart? Those in favour?
Aye.
well, that was interesting, wasn't it?
Perhaps, Claire, you could use our mayor as one of your models up on stage at the up
That's
and
what I've
coming.
seen that.
You know,
Lot of,
absolutely. Bring everyone.
I know he'd be more than happy to do it.
That's a given now.
What are you thinking about that?
Keep moving it.
Order.
We have to see what costumes come in.
Yeah.
You can decide
Oh,
what
yeah.
he wears.
That'd be
Let's
good.
move on to
Grab selection.
Not tiny pieces, not tiny pieces.
The full colour.
financial, next agenda item, Councillor Davidson's item number 8 on the agenda. It's the staff report, financial performance is at the 31st of March 2021. Rabath, all yours, and councillors, it's on pages 9 to 25 of your agenda.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors and staff. I would like to highlight one announcement that we did to the report this month, which is the grant income. As indicated at the last council meeting, although the year-to-date actual grant income is 13.2 million, the statement of comprehensive revenue and expenditure. Since there are some conditions attached to those grants, we can recognize total grant income in this financial year until the conditions are met. So we have adjusted the forecasted grant income for the year in the first column of the statement of comprehensive revenue and expenditure for the grant income, which is 7.7 million. Out of the 13.2. So the balance will be recognized in future years when the conditions are met. But other than that, the report is pretty consistent with prior month. I would like to take the report as read and happy to answer any questions if you would have to the chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Rabath. We'll take the report as read and open it for discussion. Deputy
No issues for me.
Paul.
Just that the figures are really skewed up and one is, there's government grants that come in, which are listed down there, maybe falling closer to the front, because I mean, it shows pretty clearly the size of those grants. Is all that money being received? Or is it
each of those projects are staged based on the milestones of each project. So once we hit a milestone, we can apply for the rest of funding. So there's various stages that each of the various ones are through. None of those shovel-ready projects have been completed yet. We have completed some TIF funding projects, and obviously the Three Wards Reform Fund is still going. Most of those will be finished by March next year. So that's progressing.
Yeah. I was just wondering if we get the interest of the money was there or the.
Well, the Three Wards Reform we're getting. So a lot of the funding is up front. So there is coming interest on top of that, so it's a benefit.
Right, because the budget showed that the interest expected was down.
Interest revenue.
Revenue interest.
Yeah. And I just thought with all that extra income.
I'll offset that.
So through the chair, that's because of the drop in the interest rate recently. So by the time when we set up the budget, it was higher, but the interest rate went down significantly. So that's why it's so that budget now.
Excuse
Plus, it's really good financial management as well. So with having the excess cash from grants, we've been able to not draw down debt, just draw down the debt at the end of the year. So that means that we're not actually incurring those interest costs that we would have had to do if we hadn't had that cash that we can use.
No, all pretty good. Just in terms of the spending, we've spent 3% of the budget for the leisure services and parks and reserves, and I understand that, Cash Square's on hold and all the rest of it, but I just really want these parks in Ross and Waterau sorted out, because all people want to do is, the kids want to go and play in the park and they can't, and it's been years, ever since this, health and safety audit went through and say we can't have a seesaw or a merry-go-round or whatever. There's funding aside, I want it spent. I want the park sorted out.
Yeah, so I understand that one of our engineers has been working with the community over the last few months, so that is anticipated to be spent shortly.
Councillor Marr.
Thank you. The rates debtors, very interesting. The commentary is it's around a timing lag that's attributable to the post-pandemic economic environment. Well, that's a very interesting statement to make. I'm not suggesting you made it, but it's an assumption. How do we know, like, can we have a breakdown at a future council around the age of these debtors in terms of what is actually just one payment missed and what is actually 12 months worth of unpaid rates or several years worth of unpaid rates or rates that are in dispute?
So we do have more involved and detailed information about debtors in our quarterly report, which goes to the Audit and Risk Committee, but that can be circulated for, that usually circulated to all councillors anyway.
No, it's not. Just to clarify, we don't have access on Teams to the Audit and Risk Committee's agendas or minutes, so we haven't seen them since we swapped Teams systems over.
Okay.
So councillors, but fair comment.
It goes onto our website.
Well, the agendas and minutes, so yes, councillors could go on there to look.
No, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
It is a public document, so we're not hiding it.
No, I appreciate that. But the questions really, because that's say 600,000, and we'll be close. We've issued our last rating and demands for the financial year, so I assume that figure will now doesn't include the latest rate demands either.
From the end of March.
No, so there's going to be a discrepancy we need to sort of understand, particularly if it means $1 million worth of debtors. And I'd just like to get my head around it as a councillor a bit more, if that's all right.
Just clarifying, looking for an age analysis.
Yeah.
Which is available on the Audit and Risk Committee. So
We think it is, yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Yep. Cool.
check it out.
Thank you.
Councillor Hart.
No questions, just maybe not even grammatical, but the notes to the accounts don't line up with the numbers on the statement of comprehensive review. So, because like note 1, I've lost it now. Note 1 is rates or something. But anyway, the numbers don't line up. But that was just that.
Is
Councillor Hart.
that because we are only reporting and commenting on variances over a certain amount?
Could be, Leslie, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that like number 1 is rates, I think, and then there's no comment to rates, so maybe we just need to pull,
Councillor Archer.
Yes, just through your worship, Simon, can we hold you to that? I'd love to hold you to that about the playgrounds getting done.
I had a session with the team last week, and I was told I had to follow up and guarantee it, that they had done some work with both Porter and Ross community around the aspirations and was about to spend the money. So let me do a confirmation follow-up and come back to you directly.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all for me.
Councillor Neal.
Yeah, no, good, thank you.
Councillor Cogan.
Just some clarification for me. So around the grants and subsidies that's been individually listed down here, that is what we've received in, that you guys have applied for applications for in the last. So is that since your term?
They would be all on.
That'd be all in your, so in your term, we've managed to apply for and have approved 8.97 million in funding.
Plus more that have already been completed.
Okay, and that's awesome. So, okay, 2 things to come from that answer. One is, I would love to have, and if you could, or someone could do up a list of what all of that funding has been over the last 3 years that we've gone out and managed to actually bring back into council externally. I think that that is a very strong resource for us to have as councillors when we are out there in the community talking to people. The second is with this one specifically at the moment, so that's the income we've generated at the moment on these ongoing projects. So has the expenditure also been included in here in reference to, so do we have the budgeted expected expenditure for those projects also locked in here to here, as well as what the funding is that we've received?
The question is the expenditure accrued?
Yeah, so through the chair, so some of the expenditures are capital expenditure and some of them are operational. So operational expenditures are within under other expenditure, but the capital expenditure is not going to the statement of comprehensive revenue and expenditure. So it will be capitalized at the end of the year when the project is finished. So they're not going through the statement of comprehensive revenue and expenditure.
Yeah.
But operational expenditures are.
I'm just trying to figure that around, you know, when we go back to the top and you look at, you know, where we're currently sitting financially. So I'm taking it that total revenue is including all of the, as well, all of the external funding we've received. But is total expenditure also then including all of the budgeted expenditure for those projects that we've applied for?
No, it's only the operational expenditure that we included in here.
Okay, so the surplus income really is not really relevant for us then, is it? Because it doesn't actually mean we've got a surplus of 8.5 million when we know that there's still expenditure to come out against those projects that we've allowed for the income and the revenue stream.
I think when we calculate the surplus of the deficit, we don't account for the capital expenditure. It's only the operational expenditure that we account for.
Yeah, it does skew the figures slightly, as Councillor Madgwick did mention. The revenue under accounting standards does have to go through the comprehensive revenue and expense account, but quite a lot of the expenditure will be seen as a balance sheet at the end of the year. So that final figure or operating surplus deficit is actually skewed because of the revenues that we're getting. So you won't see that expenditure other than the operating grants such as the responsible camping. That will go through this statement, but the rest of the spend or most of the spend will end up going through the balance sheet.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see the grant funding money coming through, but yeah, I just try to bring the relevance back to the top line, and yeah.
I think if those grants weren't in there, because of the zero rate increase and what we are spending, there would be a deficit there.
Yeah.
Just for your worship, there is another 800,000 to come in as another grant which came from Culture and Heritage for Carnegie. It's been signed and contracted last week.
Yeah.
So that is still in our accounts.
Yeah. Well, that's why, like, I just think if someone yourself or someone could do up a list of all of that funding that we have generated in. Yeah, I'd really like a copy of that.
It's quite substantial.
Yeah, I know. And has that been publicised?
Your worship's
as much as what it, you know, like to me, is that not something that should be?
Through the annual plan process, we do highlight how successful we have been in funding. We are currently applying for further funding through the TIF project. So we've identified at least 10 projects we're actually putting a hand up for. One of them is care square toilets. If it comes through, will be fully subsidised, or 75% subsidised. So anything that we have that we consider impacted by tourism, we can put our hand up for. So leveraging that is really significant. Articulating.
Yeah, to me, it's just such a great news story, and I'm I'm not convinced it's out there and well known enough in the community.
For example, the whole of the upgrade swimming pool, $3 million. We couldn't afford to do that.
There's a lot of things we couldn't have afforded to do had you guys not been on the ball with this. Yeah.
I think they're well publicised as they come up individually.
Yeah, but that's individual, you know, to have it as a, you know, an actual living document, I think would be extremely beneficial.
Councillor Davis?
No questions.
Right,
No, it's all good stuff.
very well presented report. Someone, councillor, like to move that the financial performance as at the March 2021 report from Finance Manager, Western District Council be received. Want to move it? Councillor Neal, thank you. Councillor Davidson, all those in favour?
Aye.
On the agenda is the road naming for unnamed roads in Kamara and Takatai. It's on pages 25 to 31 of your agenda. And Carl, in your hands.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors. I'll take it the orders being read. Generally, it's just a bit of a word exercise to tidy up a couple of unnamed roads. One of them is a long-standing one, the one in Kamara, which means they all generally know it as Boundary Road. Just a proposal to formalise that. And the other is just one from a recent subdivision. Ordinarily, the developers suggest names before it goes through and gets finalised, but sometimes they get that out. And that's what we're doing here, just addressing that little anomaly.
Thanks, Carl. It's administrative in context. Are there any questions around the table? Paul.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Kamara one, so where we say that it's accepted name in locally. Who's that from?
That comes from Kerry Stevens. She lives on the road and she's done background research into that. The other side of that is effectively it's the boundary between Kamara and Dillmanstown. That's why it's come up with that name.
I'm reminded of the debacle that we had over the naming of Dillman's with Dillman's, which was a whole debacle that went to the New Zealand Geographic Board, and it was quite divisive, and I think it just pays to put it out there before it's rubber stamped, and just to say this is a proposal, you know, if there are any contrary views to that, there may be other names. I don't know. I just know that Kamara is a little fractured when it comes to these things. And we know that from experience. The other one was over at Southside in that subdivision. The name Ricochet Road is like, the other one, Hall Road, sounds rather industrial. I think, has any thought been given to a Māori name? For instance, over Whakawhati runs very close by this, just in front of it, that's Mahanapua Creek. The true name of Mahanapua Creek, Tū Whariwhari. Has any thought been given to this? And we've had 150 years of or more of the real names being supplanted by other names. So when there's an opportunity to get to have the original names restored, we would appreciate that opportunity. Recognising that this is a private subdivision, of course, but I mean, Ricochet Road, it's like, it doesn't seem to be any history behind that. And in terms of history, there, of course, why not Craig's Freehold? And that was the name of that, where it was quite a famous gold mine in Haketika in the early 20th century. late 19th century, and there was a disaster there, and some men were died when tunnels collapsed, etc. But they'd be more apt than Ricochet Road. Obviously, just you suggested it, Carl, at all, but yeah, I just think they're more apt names.
Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, I suppose in terms of the names, I'm different about the whole thing. I do have a problem with the council coughing up $300 for a sign in a private subdivision. That's the only problem I've got with the situation. Are you laughing? It's
I'm happy that you speak up. I like it.
Councillor Mark.
I hear what Paul's saying. Speaking to the developers at Tukatai Terrace, I think their preference is not Hall Road, but Ricochet Road, and I think they were put forward because initially the whole subdivision was meant to be called Tukatai Terrace, as in all the road network, but something happened. Carl might be able to explain more about adding a road onto a road, and it's another road and layers. But if we can't decide today because there's doubt, I think we have to pull the report and consider it at a future meeting, because we'd hate to name it the wrong thing.
Councillor Hudson.
No questions.
Councillor Hartram.
One question: where did Ricochet Road come from, or how did the name come up?
So it was alluded to an incident, I believe in the 1980s when it was mined previously, something related to a theft on mining, but there wasn't a lot of detail on that.
Councillor, sorry, Carol.
Oh no, I was just going to say to be honest, to me, Hall Road sounds all right to me. It's the history. It was, as you say, mined by the Phelpses and all that, and it sort of fits in with me. But
Councillor Neil.
Yeah, I totally agree with Paul, Richard, what you've said. Thank you. I think we should be looking at marrying names first, and much longer history. I think Hall does nothing for me. Ricochet is usually a mistake, something's gone wrong. Does nothing for me. I get that sign gets shot at in the future by some young ones. Oh, it's just, yeah, it does nothing for me whatsoever. And Boundary Road is totally lacking in imagination. So I agree that we definitely go back, if there's any questions, go back to those communities. But I would like to see some married names being put forward as options.
Councillor Cody.
Thank you.
I have nothing with your presentation of that, only a small note to just jog your memory. I decided
Councillor Davis.
No, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I agree with Paul on that in terms of the Kumano stuff, because I know that was an issue for us as a learner at the board. So I think that really does need to be put out there to the community to see if they're all happy. I'm assuming they would be, but I'd hate to see that part again. In terms of the other one, I didn't really give much consideration because it was a private subdivision. But then you look at the name of the terrace, I wonder why they hadn't looked a little bit further into Samari name, because it's just seemed weird, isn't it? Yeah.
Councillors, would you be comfortable with receiving the report but not resolving to adopt any of the options pending further investigation?
Yeah.
On that basis, I'll move that council receives the report, and I'll ask for a second. Davidson, all those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. So, Chief Executive, the answer there is pretty clear. Thank you. On to the next one, proposed committee. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
Proposed committee structure, pages 32 to 51 of your agenda, and with the Chief Executive. Thanks, Simon.
So good afternoon again, councillors. Obviously, following the inauguration of this council, we propose a committee structure. What we have found is that there's a lot of crossovers between committees, particularly with parks and planning and the CBD work that's been underway, and one district plan. So there's a number of some changes we're recommending within this report. Primarily the disestablishment of the Parks and Reserves Committee. That function will be reporting through to the Planning Committee with an additional community representation within that committee. The removal of the Economic Development Committee and bringing that to full council, very similar to what's happened today with any possible economic business activity that could be presented to the full council. And the last one is to transfer the regulatory function out of the planning regulatory committee to full council. We have had no regulatory bylaw changes or anything to do with bylaw changes until today, and suggest that becomes as part of audit and risk committee. Full council. I'll take the rest of the report as read. There's a number of appendix, obviously, with the changes to do with terms of reference, and take the report as read.
Excellent. This report has come about as a request from councillors to review the committee structure, get started to review them. We were in a bit, the feeling was that it was a bit of an overkill situation. So it's open for discussion on Deputy New Cards. Makes total sense, totally support it. The only thing I mentioned to you really about my position, I was actually where I was on in community development, which is why I haven't again. So I see you've got me in audit and risk, so I wonder whether I should come out of community development.
Happy to take as a consideration with his worship and confirm afterwards.
Thank you. Two comments. Firstly, the Parks Subcommittee is essentially being converted into a standing committee of the council.
No, it's joining into the overarching planning committee, so the terms of reference changes to include oversight of parks and reserves.
Right. Okay, but with those external appointments,
some representation, not all of the representation within the planning.
Yes, I just think that, and that's I'm cut high with that. It's just I think that the Te Tai Poutine plan ought to rest with the council, full council.
So to streamline planning function, we have the representation on the joint committee already on the planning committee. So we do workshop TPP agenda items prior to meetings within that small forum. As alluded to with Joe Armstrong's presentation, there's a huge amount of work in front of that committee. To incorporate the full council with all of those workshops would be quite a burden. What I suggest, as Joe has alluded to, there are some strategic conversations that you can have with the wider council as a whole, that those invitations go to full council as part of workshops.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to burden the councils anymore, of course, but because we get down to the sharp end of it with the TTPP, I just thought coming to the council, we really appreciate the input more on councillors, and that doesn't necessarily have to bring the council forward. And it's not doesn't mean that they have to expecting them to go to these regular meetings with the planners. However, I just think that it's given that that other committee has already got enough on, and that the planning committee will only be meeting every 2-3 months, whereas the council meets every month. I just thought TTPP.
That's probably for council's consideration. We could make it a standing agenda item as TTPP in full council every month. There's a challenge there in terms of the amount of activity happening in that space, and to ensure that we don't bog councils down in a long discussion about all those different topics. And probably just highlight the real strategic aspects of what's coming up in the next agenda items. We can cover off the agenda items in a high level, but if there's a deep dive, we could probably need a workshop potentially outside of the council.
Don't we do that local briefing by Fiona?
Yeah, but that's only with the joint committee members at the moment. What Paul's alluding to is sharing it as a wider discussion about full council.
Yes, I think that would be a great benefit. We can draw these in advance, what the issues are that come up, so that there is greater input in these TTP meetings. So that was one. And the other one I wanted to suggest perhaps wasn't, I haven't talked to Councillor Kennedy, but I thought he would be better placed, to be honest, on audit and risk rather than on the planning committee. I mean, he likes to poke the borax at the council and ask questions. And
what are you saying?
300 signs. That's the comment.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
That's the compliment.
And so I would have thought that he would have a role to play on what it is. That's just. Thank you.
And what do you say, Councillor?
Oh, thank you very much. I'm taken aback. Yeah. I just want whatever it is to work. I don't have any real great ideas about it. Just one thing, the Community Development Committee, and where it says members, says Southern Ward representative. And are you looking for either Ian, myself, or someone from the community?
No, it's one of the councillors just part of that. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, just here.
Page.
The chair, what are we?
37.
37, it's David, Deputy Mayor Carruthers, who's not keen on that, and and it goes down, it says Southern Ward representative, so that's Ian or myself, is it not? So if you're looking for someone, I'm currently on one, and I would do that if you're looking for a councillor. That's all I would say.
So
if you know,
we highlighted that as a gap. So we would be requesting that one of you just put your hand up.
yeah, well, Kieran currently on one.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks. Councillor Martin.
I was going to ask if I can buy some chewing gum off Brian, but no. So I have a lot of thoughts on this. I think it's ideals based initially. It's what do we want to be? Do we want to be a council of committees or just a council where the decisions are made? And the thinking, as I understand it at the time, to introduce the committee structure was to get more people more connected with decisions at the chalk face. So more community participation, more governance oversight over special projects, West Coast Wilderness Trail, for example, connection with the community through community development, connection through parks, reserves and environment with community representation. And I think what's actually happened is we've gone into it idealistically, and then we've realised what your council's realised is actually administratively, it's a huge workload to carry committees. And so that's kind of my opening comments. I think it's critical that someone somewhere has a focus on economic development, particularly for Friends and Fox and Glacier Country. I think it's too important an issue to be lost and just sort of whistle away in full council. And I say that with the utmost respect to us as councillors, but unless we actually say this is a real priority area, it won't become a focus of us. It'll just be, occasionally we'll get a report that has some alignment with economic development, and we lose the ability to have direct connection, which I think has been really useful with Western Holdings regularly outside of them coming to present to us in a council meeting, because they sit on the committee, Joe Burney from Development West Coast. So we lose a bit of collaboration. So that needs to be put on the table as a risk. The Parks, Reserves and Environment Subcommittee. Now, I can understand from staff perspective why you would want to disestablish that committee, because it shakes the tree. And for a long time, it's lost its purpose. It's not sure what it needs to do. And I think the people that actually add value to that committee are the community members that sit on it, because they have industry knowledge or community knowledge of the issues that we're actually talking about. If we reference the last meeting we had, we talked a lot about reserve management and reserve management plans and development of those, and Rob Daniel was critical in that discussion because he had that knowledge, and it would have been a very different meeting if it had just been half a dozen councillors. So I can accept the concept of folding the subcommittee into the planning committee, but I do think you need to extend an invite first and foremost to the current members of the subcommittee out of respect, because they have signed up for a 3-year period, and I think they do add value in their own right. And it does talk about community representation from the wards. We've struggled to get southern representation from the southern area, so that would be an area I think we'd like to beef up. But I still believe that the current members of the subcommittee should be listed by name as members of that committee. This is where we start to open other issues like, okay, now they're voting on all matters relating to planning that sit on that delegation. So what's suddenly gone from a specific focus on parks reserves, now they have the ability to talk about RMA and like a whole lot of other responsibilities. So we've got to just be careful here, but my recommendation strongly is around people, respecting people that have, I appreciate we've got is it 3 o'clock, Your Worship? So we might have to pause here then and go into that. We got the citizenship. Okay, so that's got to be discussed because, they don't even know, I doubt they even know we're even discussing disestablishing the subcommittee. So I'd like that discussed, what we're going to do with community representation. The other question I had was around the Audit and Risk Committee. Are you proposing that they become responsible for reviewing bylaws?
No, I said full council.
Oh, because it is in the draft terms of reference for that committee with a new line added to review policies and bylaws.
You are correct. It might be mistaken.
There's certainly be reviewing policies, which is not changed.
Which is not changed, yeah. Okay, so full council will deal with bylaws.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing, yes. Comparison, so we'll amend that.
And the regulatory delegations transferred to full council, I think, logistically probably makes sense. So there'll be the establishment of the new subcommittee on the structure as well. That's the next staff report. So there's potential to still adapt this in the future, but I personally think we go with the recommendations, but with those amendments, to capture our intent around bylaws. But we should be moving, if we're going to merge the committees, or subcommittee with the committee, then we need to bring those people as well. And if they choose, or extend an invite to those people to be part of that committee. And if they choose not to, because suddenly it's got a different scope and a different purpose, then they might step away. But I find it very weird for us to, establish something for 3 years, 18 months and say, oh, sorry, now you're all no longer required. We're going to now go through another EOI process, advertise, get people. It feels messy to me.
Well, we certainly couldn't have voting rights, and your meeting length could become hugely extended because you have a bunch of people that have no knowledge or interest in the activity of the committee. So
that's why I think it's a real risk, because at the moment our parks and reserves generally that dominates that committee discussion on this, and there's a lot of work to be done in that space, development of reserve management policies, all of the contract is about to be reviewed. It's huge. And if we want lay people on the committee, making decisions on other things, I think that opens another can of worms. So we're in a crossroads here.
This is why you've got to ensure that the balance is correct. We're not, personally, I wouldn't actually offer every single one that was on the subcommittee part of a placement on the planning committee, just a representation from each board as it states there. Or else you will get outvoted as a representative council because you will have people that have been not elected on the committee.
So when we're thinking about the subcommittee, like outside of its servicing needs and outside of its staff requirements, what load does it place on the structure? Because the councillors that are currently on it, Jane and I, and we I think, more than willing to keep attending those meetings. So, I understand the need to merge them, but it raises that issue. So could we still service a subcommittee on that issue, only that issue, parks and reserves? Because merging and then bringing 3 lay people onto a planning committee to discuss TPP issues doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel right at all.
You simply can't do that. If you were elected to make decisions. That's the way it is.
And it's actually got as much importance as the cycle trail in terms of the huge reserves issues, your playground issues, all these issues. They need a home to be dealt with, and we don't want to be planning committee delving to that sort of level. I don't think.
So is your suggestion that there is a separate reserves subcommittee?
Well, my suggestion initially was go with the recommendation, but now I think after discussing it and hearing Simon's feedback and your feedback, I think we should just keep that committee, that subcommittee as a subcommittee under the planning. Move it to planning and keep it under there as a separate subcommittee.
Can I just ask for some advice here? TC, do you have a view on that?
I think we've got other options. If we go with the recommendation that's currently, if we go with the recommendation that currently has been on the floor, in terms of what we've discussed with the chief executive and his managers, it's where we see best value so that we're ensuring that there are reports going before that are relevant to the committee as defined in your paper now. As against what has become, as Councillor Martin has touched on, there's been discussion issues, there's been lack of direction, there's been crossover between committees as well. But it's not to say that the members in terms of the current parts of reserve, because one thing we don't always, not doing well is not quite the right term, because we are so pushed for time to try and fit all things into one facet, but there's still place for workshops and other such things. So as we are potentially initially falling back to that group in terms of when we're looking at potentials for workshop that have a parks and reserve focus, it's ensuring that we call on those people that can be part of that, which then formulates reports that then go back to the planning committee that can have an input from those people as well, which then eliminates the fear on the voting rights or the size of the committee. And we know that when committees get too large, they become unwieldy because they do tend to drag on because everybody wants to have their 5 cents worth on an important issue to them, and then we start to lose focus and not necessarily get the information you're after. But the structure that's been put through here has been through intense discussion with all managers. It's making sure that through the chief executive that he's happy as well that we're covering all those bases, that it leads to formal reports coming to each committee as against verbal reports or topics for discussion which don't always add value because there's nothing to direct discussion around. So that's the initial. And as touched on, it's something that you can always review as a council as you go forward. If, as Councillor Martin has spoken about, then the workload starts to look like it's evolving into something else, then as managers and through the CE, you would expect us to bring that back to you and say, actually, now we need subcommittees for those. At this stage, the structure as proposed is what meets the needs of both the organisation and from a reporting aspect.
Can it sit outside just like the Safer Westland group that meets and other groups that meet, and like it was in the past? Can it be a non-constituted committee of council?
Yes, Your Worship. So what I would recommend to proceed to go forward with this, there is a project that we need to do, which is already on plans. I think the wider group that would been involved in parks and reserves can be part of developing that as a specific project that reports through to the planning committee. So I'm happy to take that as an action. So that group would workshop how we develop the reserves management plans and come back and get consistent feedback. So I think that suggestion is very similar to the Safer Communities. We have a reserves management plan working group that works alongside development with council staff.
I'm conscious of time, Councillor Councillor Hart?
No, I support the recommendations.
Councillor Hart?
Yes, just one thing on the proposed. I'm not in planning, and in the graph I am in planning. Is that a mistake, or?
We're trying to get rid of him or put him in.
Well, he's in currently.
I'm happy to be in one.
I've been voted out.
I think, Councillor Hutchins, you're in planning because all the work that was happening at Friends. So let's get a stay in to tell the truth.
Capital projects and planning.
And councillors, if there is a space that you want to be in on one of the committees, send me an email.
Yeah, if you want to be on some committees, we might have full council.
Well, and you happy with that, Councillor Hartwell?
Yeah, I missed that. Sorry, there's a bit of noise.
What is the answer?
In regards to you being represented in planning and capital projects, I think that makes sense for both committees.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Neil.
Yeah, some of the comments that have already been made. I do think we need a better way to get community input. And I think it needs to be more targeted, so I can't see the point in having people from South West and on the Parks and Reserves lined up here. It should be something that's down there. And I think these committees could be a lot more strategic rather than getting involved in what size lawnmower we use or anything like that, because that's ridiculous. Less meetings, but really getting good, clear direction from the community.
In terms of when we go through and do the reserve management plans for the parks down south, we would ask for representatives down south. So it'll be a different working group that works through those ones.
Yeah.
Councillor Coates.
No, everything is fine apart from what I mentioned to Bruce earlier that I'd like to be considered to go onto the planning.
Okay. Councillor Davis.
It's all good. I just think it should have been a workshop this first. That's all.
Councillor.
No, I think it's great going from 1907 to 1905. I think that's a good thing for me.
You've seen the recommendation.
Well, we were considering your wellness.
Well, my employer already thinks I'm striving off anyway. So I think I'll be happy that I'm not striving off one more time.
So there are recommendations A, B, C, and D. Would someone like to move that the council receives the report, B, the council adopt the amended committee structure in Appendix 1 as follows: Standing Committees, Audit and Risk Committee, Capital Projects and Tenders Committee, Planning Committee, Community Development Committee, CE's Review Committee, Subcommittee, the West Coast Wilderness Trail Subcommittee, the disestablishment or transfer of the following delegations: Economic Development Committee, Parks, Reserves and Environment Committee, regulatory delegations transferred to full council. C, that council adopt the amended terms of reference for the 5 standing committees. And D, that the meeting calendar be updated to reflect the frequency and scheduling of committee meetings. Someone to move that?
Your Worship, can we just capture the development of the reference group as well as an additional?
So as a E?
As a 10.5, will it be? Oh, you might have it as a different numbering system. Sorry, I'm just off the agenda. Sorry about that. But yeah, it'll be an E for you.
You need to deal with those minor personnel changes we.
If we could say as minuted.
Sorry, I just want to clarify where the TTPP ends up.
So if you look at the size of the planning committee now, there's all but 2 councillors on the planning committee. So I suggest that the planning committee has enough representation to continue in its current state, and that we will have agenda items tabled at each council meeting of the future TPP agenda items are, so a regular report.
So you're proposing to keep TTPP with the planning committee?
Yeah, but also table monthly reports in terms of what agenda items we cover.
Yes. But isn't that doubling up? But I mean, that's the main. I suppose point is to get that feedback on the upcoming agenda items.
We're not expanding the briefing that Fiona gives us.
What I'm suggesting there is remove it completely from planning and have it as a agenda item on full council.
Right, yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're on the same page.
Yes. There you go. It seems to be pretty clear. Someone like to move that resolution? So, Deputy Mayor for others. For a second. Thank you, Councillor Hart. All those in favour, please.
Aye.
Against? Thank you very much. What's our timing for the people?
We probably need to now, so if we can swap. We could adjourn.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it.
If we do the company services, then we can adjourn. Have the item 10, and we can make any.
So leave the meeting open at the present time?
Yeah, we just need to adjourn, do the ceremony first, please.
Megan, can just include my apologies, I believe it's 10 to 4, so if come back into the meeting, just note my apologies, and I'll get back to
So move to it now.
No, we'll do the citizenship ceremony.
Yeah, that's all right.
And then we'll adjourn.
Okay, move to citizens. Okay, let's tidy up for that. The councillors, could you move your chairs into in behind these guys here? Just take the chair with you.
Take the chair.
It's only to stop back speaking.
Oh.
Oh, man. Fire it down the line. Oh, no, the first one's free.
No, that's the next.
Oh, hang on.
That's the next month.
Wait. Hold your horses. Why?
Yeah. I think Marianne.
You can have a whole pack.
You need to help.
It's expired.
Oh, sorry.
This is my afternoon tea. Take it or
Oh, you want to chewing gum?
Those in the back row not make trouble.
It's like a bun.
Hey, well, I don't point.
I just want to do There you go. See?
Alexander. Is he still there?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think he must have on
A new candidate who
I know. He also with responsibility.
We've got half their staff are getting their citizenship. Have you really sussed that?
It's the quote, Dagmar.
Oh.
If you would have
Folks,
I'm going to go home.
of the New Zealand citizenship story from Internal Affairs and be presented with a native tree also. Goofy the dog will not get a tree, but it's here nevertheless. Now there'll be a photo opportunity during the ceremony, and at the completion of the ceremony, we ask you to remain seated. We will then adjourn for afternoon tea and further opportunities for photographs with councillors, new Westland District citizens and their guests. Now, it's really important that if you want a photograph taken, this is the time to do it. You know, so if you're a friend, if you're a supporter, if you're family, if you like a photo taken of your family by yourself, this is the time to do it. We don't get a second run at the second run at it. Thank you for that. We'll start the process. Can you, actually, that's the point. Can you all see?
Sound.
Along like clouds, ancient lands, open fields, sacred grounds, bays of plenty, the bluff, the cape, steaming sands, boiling plates, white water swells, bridges of old, deep clear nights, open shows, winter season brings out the best, summer nights in Auckland. And my father used to say, when we came to this land of plenty, and we came to this land of hope, we came to this land of good times, and we came to this land of love.
Kia ora koutou. As Governor-General, I represent Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen of New Zealand. On Her Majesty's behalf, and on behalf of all of my fellow citizens, I'm delighted to extend a warm welcome to you, our newest New Zealanders. We all belong to a nation of immigrants. We understand what it means to leave a familiar world behind and look for opportunities in a new land. When you become a New Zealand citizen, you will join one of the most diverse populations in the world. Your skills, commitment and cultural traditions will help shape the future direction of your communities and our nation. You'll enjoy the same rights and take on the same responsibilities as your fellow New Zealanders. Our history will become part of your history, and your future will become part of our future. Thank you for choosing to make New Zealand your home. I wish you and your families every success in this next stage of your life journey. Noho ora mai. Welcome.
We came to this land of plenty, and we came to this land of hope. We came to this land of good times, and we came to this land of love. We came to this land of love.
Hello, I'm Jan Tinetti, the Minister of Internal Affairs. Today I'm here at the National Library, home of the He Tohu exhibition. The exhibition is home to the iconic constitutional documents that have shaped New Zealand, including Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which is the partnership your new home country, Aotearoa New Zealand, is built on. It gives me great pleasure on behalf of the government and the people of New Zealand to welcome you as a citizen, as a New Zealander in every sense of the word. Your decision to become a citizen reflects a lifelong commitment to our country. In turn, it can be passed on to a future generation wherever they are born. Some have been here for many generations, and some, like you, are new. But we are all New Zealanders, Kiwis. Congratulations! Until today, New Zealand was your home. Now it is also your country.
There's a story I know, we all leave and let go. There is nothing to hold us. In a moment of time, when the fruit becomes wine and the thought becomes the memory, all your sorrow, maybe tomorrow will fade away in the air. Trying to please me, making it easy, it won't be there, it won't be there in your life, in your life, in your life, oh, in your life.
I ask you all to stand and sing the national anthem.
God of nations and our feet, in the arms of love we meet. Hear our voices, we entreat. God defend our free land. God worship triple star from the shouts of strife and war. Make the praises good afar. God defend New Zealand. Men of every creed and race, gather here before thy face. Asking thee to bless this place. God defend our free land. From dissension, envy, hate, and corruption, God our state. Make our country good and great. God defend New Zealand. Peace now, Lord, shall be our boast. Russian foes assail our coast. Make us big and mighty host. God defend our freedom. Lord of battles in thy might, put our enemies to flight. Let our blessings never cease. Give us plenty, give us peace. God defend our free land from dishonor and from shame. God, our country's spotless name, crown her with immortal fame. God defend New Zealand. May our mountains ever be freedom's ramparts on the sea. Make us faithful unto thee. God defend our free land. Guide her in the nation's land, preaching love and truth to man, working out thy glorious plan. God defend New Zealand.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's the first time I've seen that version. No.
Still coming back to you, right? I think very few New Zealanders know we've got more than one bird.
Right, the first one today is you've agreed to take the information and allegiance.
I, Pravan Gurikar, of Politica, affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of New Zealand, her heirs and successors according to law, and that I will faithfully observe the laws of New Zealand and fulfill my duties as a New Zealand citizen.
Special for me.
So, well done. Thank you. And we've got Portland here from Internal Affairs, that sets out your rights and obligations as a Kiwi. And we've got in fantastic condition, these are much better than the last ones we had. Can we share one photo of the flag?
No.
And we're sticking escaping. Well done. Thank you very much.
Liana.
Is it pretty close?
Thank you.
So you've taken the information.
I, Leala Jade Stephanie of Hokitika, affirm that I will be faithful and bear true alliance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of New Zealand, her heirs and successors according to law, and that I will faithfully observe the laws of New Zealand and fulfil my duties as a New Zealand citizen.
So here we have your certificate of citizenship, and that you are Kiwi. You can't escape now. We have you. This is the family. If you want to take that.
Okay, it's all looks like it could just be the family. Oh, yes.
Now I'd asked that the group from 2020 here, and the last one to come forward. It's gives me great pleasure to invite Leslie Crichton forward for a number of reasons. And I wondered whether you'd be prepared to bring Goofy with you. This is a book from Internal Affairs, which you know inside out, I'm sure. That's a tree to grow in the garden. Will Goofy sit?
Yes, Goofy sits.
Sit, Goofy. There we go. Yeah, bring in a photo.
Did you get that right?
Goofy for me, yeah.
Sorry, Your Worship. Now, would you like some?
So there's a hard copy.
Come on,
Just two ladies. Questions, do we start? Do we take the whole family or go one at a time? So you go one at a time. Thanks, Nick. Alexander? The whole family. Are you sure?
Because we wouldn't. How do you feel about that?
Could I have could Olivia come up? Olivia can come up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming, Kiwi. That's a book of Internal Affairs. And of course, you've got your certificate there. Would you mind, David, can you come and see you lady? We have to smile. Here we go. You're enjoying this. Excellent. Good job. It's going to be.
Yeah.
And we'll get you all together, don't panic.
Hello.
Congratulations. This is fantastic.
Thank you.
Great job, my God. We've known each other a long time. Yes. Congratulations. Would you like to bring the family forward? Yes, I'd love to, please. Come on, Beverly. You're a giant, you're a giant. Just have to wee bit, so catch you there. How they're looking there, Di? You're feeding them too much, they're growing. Well, it's the best part of the ceremony when we get to welcome our new citizens, because becoming a citizen of New Zealand is a big thing. And today it's probably greater than it's been ever. You look around the world and you look at the chaos that's out there with COVID-19, and here we are in New Zealand. We wander the streets. You can hug someone without catching anything, and that's fabulous. You can bring your dog to the citizenship ceremony, and your kids. So it's a huge welcome to you all. Really appreciate you choosing Westland to come along and be presented with your certificates. To those of you that I know, and I guess it's probably important, welcome. It's a genuine, heartfelt welcome. And wondered whether you'd like to join us for a brief afternoon tea, and it's probably one of the few things you'll get out of the council for nothing. Would you like to come through? Councillors, on their June meeting, we join our guests and Thank you for your patience there, guys. That was good. Really important. That's good.
I still think you should have provided afternoon tea, like a nice little dog bone or something for John. That was a big day for him too. He suited the chains more than you too, Grace, just quietly.
Yeah, too. Sort of put a man with him, didn't he?
Yeah, good things to say too.
He did.
Yeah. And you didn't give him a tray?
To piss on.
And that's why the dog couldn't bark.
Right, we'll recommence the meeting. We were adjourned with, say, 4:05. Yeah, we live streaming now. You still continue. Thank you very much for that. Right. Right, the next item on the agenda is the Hokitika Waste Water Treatment Plant Oversight Committee. It's on pages 52 to 54. Agenda and Chief Executive.
Yeah, good afternoon, councillors. So in terms of the Hokitika Wastewater Treatment Project, this is a significant investment for council, 10 million plus. The fact that it is so significant and it has a lot of touch points with stakeholders. Of particular is our partnership agreement with iwi, Ngāti Wairau and Whakawhio have signed, and council have signed a memorandum of understanding. As part of that memorandum of understanding is to get into partnership with significant aspects of council. So what we're proposing here is to form a oversight committee, and I apologise for the spelling, it's actually not spelled correctly, in partnership with iwi and council together as a governance oversight group. We've actually met with iwi at Arahura Marae and had a hui and discussed this with the representation that turned up. And everyone around the table was supportive of the concept. So the next stage for this is to actually develop terms of reference in terms of what does the committee makeup look like, and also what is their role. So what I'm asking for the council to do today is to agree the concept of forming the subcommittee, and we will then proceed to develop terms of reference to bring back to the next council meeting in May.
Thanks, Simon. Put around the table.
So I'm just wondering about the intended status of this committee. It's essentially, you call it, it's an oversight committee, but in terms of its decision-making ability and so on.
Without going into detail of what a terms of reference may look like, so the premise is to actually provide very clear guidance around the key objectives of the project, to get both councils and iwi's key objectives, which then align with the project future looks like. So once those objectives are established, coming back to council to get them confirmed, and then that locks and loads what the future design status would be of that project. So obviously there's a very significant rights that iwi want to place around this, the project and the outcomes of the project. We want to endorse that, cement it as a way forward in terms of what the project is about.
So it has an admin as opposed to decision making.
It is a decision making in a true sense of partnership. So they would come back for endorsement though at full council. It's the regulatory framework that's behind it.
No, just rather more to the
Councillor Kennedy.
No, it's good. Obviously, Simon said it's a major part of it, and it's important that I think we are right at the forefront of that, so we make sure we get it tidy for everything. So, sweet, thank you.
Councillor Martin.
I support the concept. I think it will have a lot of benefit. I think the reason we're engaging with iwi is not only for their beliefs and cultural competencies and understanding, but also the knowledge that they bring. So I actually think that all people on this committee, subcommittee, whatever the proposed structure is, need to actually be acknowledged for their contribution. I think it's going to be a huge body of work, and it's not fair of us as people that are remunerated to do this work to just flick it off to a subcommittee and expect them to undertake it without any koha or acknowledgement of their time. So I think I personally would be advocating for, as part of the terms of reference, a fees structure, model, and for the council to consider, because this could go on for 3 years and it's going to be a significant undertaking for whoever ends up sitting on that subcommittee. So they're my thoughts. If we're talking true partnership, we can't have half the group paid and half not, or half the committee paid and half not. So that's the price of partnership.
Councillor Hart.
No questions, thanks.
Archer.
No questions. Support the idea.
Councillor Coggins.
Yep, no questions. I fully support as well.
Councillor Davis.
Yep, I've got a couple of questions. I think the first thing is that it should be outlined how important it is for council and iwi. Why it is so important, this particular project.
In terms of why it shouldn't have a oversight committee in the first place?
Yes, like a partnership.
Yeah, so there are significant impacts from wastewater. As we know, we have a so-called compliant scheme, but in terms of the discharge elements of wastewater treatment plant, we need to obviously address the rights of iwi in this space as well. The fact that this is probably the biggest spend council's had, I'm not sure it's spent more than $10 million project in the past, but definitely it's the biggest project we have in the next 10 years in council.
Yep.
So it really does have a lot of touch points with the iwi.
I'd like to see that sort of outlined in the paper.
That'll come as part of the terms of reference.
And the other question is it binding?
The oversight committee outcomes?
Yes.
So once again, it still requires council to endorse the direction of objectives set by the oversight committee.
Okay, thank you.
So, this is hard when we obviously representation of iwi around the council table. We have it today, but there's no voting rights, so still has to come back to council for endorsement.
Yeah, thank you.
I would hope that council acknowledges the objectives that they does get put forward.
Brian's right. Environmentally, why is this so significant to you?
Well, there's a number of reasons, but I think the biggest one at the moment is the fact that right from day one, there was way back when I first considered this project that there was issues with it from our perspective. I think Paul summed it up a wee while ago in saying that we really don't want to be dumping our effluent out to sea. Right, so there's a big no for us because obviously we're at Kaimoana, we've got our Muscle Beach down the road. There's a whole lot that's the Kaimoana area, all the sea is at a special place to us. So to actually be shipping in it, I mean, really, I don't think it needs to be explained. I think it's just common sense, to be honest. And there's got to be an alternative and a better way of doing it. And I'm sure there is. We just got to try and figure out how to do that. And we're not stupid. We know that this comes with some ramifications around financing it, right? So, my team in particular are realistic, and I understand that how this thing's going to be funded, but it also has to be taken into account on the outcome of it at the end of the day. But something has to change. It can't continue to operate the way it is.
Just one more comment, Your Worship. Obviously, with the Three Waters reform, this project will potentially only be halfway through once, if this new body is formed. the target for that date, based on the information we have to date, is 1st of July 2024. We still have 2 years to go and we'll be hopefully already digging ground by then. So that transition phase between in the last year prior to that formation, we need to have assurance that this oversight community is still endorsed to the end of the project. So that's one of the conditions we need to make sure we still have a voice around the table.
Thank you. The other thing that's important to note is that, let's say it costs 12 million, I've no idea, and it's debt funded. If the government proceeds with its Three Waters agenda, the debt will be taken by whatever the government entity is that controls these things. So council will be relieved of its debt at that stage. So there are some upsides to some things that we're doing.
Well, it was part of the, oh, sorry.
Very much overall.
Yes, of course. Well, there's no lose control.
Lose control and the bill will be coming the other way.
Yes, well, I guess that's something we'll, as we get more and more information, we'll be able to report back to council on. We have around the table, there's support for the recommendation. Would someone like to move that council receive the report? B, that engagement and consultation will be undertaken with iwi as part of the establishment of the Hokitika Wastewater Treatment Plant Oversight Committee. C, that the Chief Executive complete the draft terms of reference for the committee and report back to council at the May 2021 council meeting. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Kennedy, thank you. I'll second it. Councillor Hartshaw, all those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. I think that's a significant decision in my mind.
Your worship, I need to leave at 4:30 for about 15 minutes for a health appointment.
I'll keep the pressure on.
No, I think he wants to get the torch.
I agree with the one project. Can we cancel that meeting statement?
We can do it, I would recommend we do it after we've got the terms of reference finalised.
Oh, okay.
So
And
we actually,
know who
and we'll know who the representation is.
okay.
We'll keep it, obviously this is in public arena already as part of this, but we should put a media release out in terms of this formation. Yes, okay, we'll do that.
I think in view of the fact that it's already out there, Emma will be able to do something to ensure the public is aware of the importance of this decision. I think that's what you were saying, Paul.
Yeah.
And move on to the adoption of the amended statement of technical changes to the long-term plan 2018-2028. It's on pages 55 to 57 of your agenda. And Emma, in your hands.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to take the report as read and ask if there are any questions about it.
Thanks, Emma. I could go around the table, but I'm thinking there might be a lot of questions. So I'd like to move the recommendation A, that council receive the report. B, that council adopt the amended summary of technical changes to the long-term plan 2018-2028. So Deputy Mayor Carruthers, thank you very much. Councillor Hart, those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
Move on to the next item of the agenda, which is the re-adoption of the Westland District Council Water Supply bylaw of 2016. It's on pages 58 to 79 of your agenda. And welcome to Martin Ross to present the report.
Afternoon, Your Worship, councillors. Now, can I take it that this has been received and read?
Yes, Paul. Thanks, Martin. We'll open it for discussion if once again it's relatively administrative.
Oh, sorry, I did have questions about dragging things on. Where do the unmonitored water supplies sit within this? The likes of Harold Creek or the ones out at the lake, and what protections are afforded to those people on those supplies which the council are currently rating for?
So my understanding is Harold Creek isn't rated for at the moment.
and it hasn't been for a few short years now. So that is my understanding, that occurred some years ago. We still have until there is a change to ownership, or if you like, our jurisdiction for Harold Creek, we remain responsible for the operations and maintenance of that intake.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering how, because it's not mentioned at all, so we're still in charge of it, and regardless of what this bylaw says.
We are, at this stage we are, yes, we are responsible, we have responsibility for it.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah. Councillor Martin.
Thank you for the report. Are we not required to undertake special consultative procedure on bylaws when we review bylaws? I thought we were meant to.
So my understanding is that there is no, because there's no change to the bylaw as such, it's only administrative regarding codes of practice, standards, and the acts that have been superseded or changed in their terminology. That is what the bylaw is referring to, and that's what's been amended. The actual bylaw itself hasn't changed, remains the same. So therefore, if this is adopted, then it would be advertised that the resolution was that the amended bylaw has been adopted, rather than going out to consultation.
It's just in the past we've been told when we do bylaws that, and without even amending them, that they have to go out for special consultation. So it's which we did in aligned with the last LTP. So I'm very interested to hear about this loophole.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that. Paul.
Just quickly, Your Worship, I'm just wondering, this bylaw was already there. Is it necessary to go through all this, given that 3 boards are going to walk away from this evening?
Well, it's a good point. I mean, realistically, within 3 years, it could be null and void. However, it has to be reviewed every 5 years. So that's why it's been reviewed now.
So just through Your Worship, so that's why we're looking just to roll it over and not make any significant amendments, because we don't know what the future holds. So it is administrative only. So we've actually reviewed the requirements in it. Because it's only that, it doesn't require full consultation.
Okay, cool. That's great.
If you want the legal terminology.
No, that's suffice. No, we've had it from staff, but it's not required. Minute that and we move on.
Any other questions? Someone like to move then that council receive the report. Council support the preferred option to re-adopt the amended Western District Council Water Supply Bylaw of 2016. Can I have a mover?
Yeah.
Councillor Davidson, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hartshaw, all those in favour?
Aye.
Thanks, Martin. Thank you.
Thanks,
The next
Martin.
one is an administrative resolution, and it's appointing Susan Gooch to the Building Control Officer. Susan Marshall.
If you called her Susan Marshall, because they're not actually married,
No, she doesn't.
she would kill you. Yeah.
Anyway, onto the, I would like to move that the council confirm and seal being affixed to the following document is listed on the agenda, which is the warrant of appointment of Building Control Officer. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Those in favour?
Aye.
Now move to the public excluded part of the meeting. The meeting will be adjourned for 2 minutes to allow the committee to disconnect from Zoom for the open section of the meeting and reconnect via the second Zoom invite for the public excluded section of the meeting. To all those that are watching, thank you very much for attending today, and